All right, this one we have a question about real estate. I recently was looking into potential property options. There are a lot of factors that go into renting versus owning, ability to resell the property, etc. One question I have is, if I wanted to own a property, what is the case for purchasing a condo over a house?
Well, part of it is how much can you afford? Um, Side by side, the average condo is cheaper than the average house because it's smaller. You don't have the land and everything else. In some ways, purchasing a condo may be a good entree into the housing market.
I was gonna say I was gonna change the question a bit to, is it a good idea to get a condo as your entry into I want to own some property and start getting involved in real estate?
Right, because, well, here's, like I said, condo might be cheaper. You don't have all the maintenance issues with a condo that you would with a house because you're only responsible for the interior and not the exterior. Now you're paying a monthly homeowner's fee for that privilege. But like I said, yeah, it gets you, it's an easier way into real estate. And you can actually hopefully use that condo as it goes up in value to maybe create more value, more equity for you that you can then use to buy the house you want. And if you're really lucky, depending on the timing and circumstances, maybe you could keep the condo and rent it out. So now you have a rental property when you buy your house. So yeah, there's a whole lot of potential questions to be asked, but if if you want to own a house, you got to have that dog, you want to have that yard, you just want to have a garage of your own, then buy the house. People do that all the time. And you'll find out real quick if you like owning a house or not. Because I had dinner with some people last night. They're talking about moving out of California so they can afford a house. And they make pretty good money. And their biggest complaint about being in their apartment is it's a really nice project, it's a really nice place, but all their neighbors are insane. So, between the noise and people not and their barking dogs on the other side of the wall, and quite honestly, the pot smoking, they're done with apartment life. They're just done. So there's positives and negatives to both sides.
I have to say that owning a house gives you a little bit more distance, but it still doesn't end crazy people.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna have to tell them where they need to move.
They're everywhere.
I think a big argument though, and to Frank's point, is sort of there can be a big jump a lot of times between renting an apartment and what that's going to cost you, and then owning a home and what that's going to cost you.
Yeah.
And you sort of have this condo that's this in the middle option that you might be able to get to quicker than you would a home from, as you progress in your career and are able to afford more. And we've talked about this in the past, any chance you have to start owning a property as early as possible is always an advantage rather than I'm going to rent, and you do that for however long it takes you to get to the point where you can actually get that home. Frank, I think you'd agree, owning and earlier than later, and time is always going to be your friend as far as value increases, is a big argument to make. If you're thinking about, well, I can't afford the home, I can afford the condo, but the rent at an apartment's cheaper, so I'm going to go with that until I can get the home.
Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of, at least buying one piece of real estate to build equity. You're never going to build equity in an apartment. And there are people who say, well, if you rent an apartment, you can take that extra money and invest it, and blah, 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 blah. Most people don't. It was sort of like the theory, back in the 80s where the term life insurance people were going to everybody and getting them to cash in their whole life policies, buy a term life instead, take that extra money and invest it. Yes, it works, but real estate is real estate. Real estate is one of the great ways to build wealth in this country. And I don't see that changing anytime soon, no matter what tax laws they try to pass. No one ever goes after real estate. I think it's as much of a third rail as Social Security we're trying to change. So, but another thing about owning a home versus a condo is, as a friend of mine once said, I never realized what you were talking about when you were talking about when you own a home, you always have something to do. And yes, you can hire a gardener, you can hire painters, you can hire everything, but that your costs just go up. And most people, when they own a home, at least in the beginning, they want to do it themselves. They're going to make it they're going to make their house their own. And so a house is a lot more work than a condo. So there's always that.